Hello, this is Paul Minnan. My pen, dipped in the ink of bitterness and sarcasm, is ready to tell you a story that could have taken place on the dusty streets of pre-revolutionary Petersburg, but instead occurred in the dazzling light of 21st century LED lamps. A story of how a broken heart can become an inexhaustible source of the most sophisticated inspiration. Chapter I, a 5-letter word. It all came crashing down because of one word. A silly, vulgar word, sticky like caramel on a child's fingers. Babe. It didn't arrive on my phone screen for me. It was intended for her, my Marina, from a certain Stas, her fellow office drone. I saw it by chance when her phone, left on the kitchen table, lit up with a silent notification. That single word, written by another's hand, negated 4.5 years of my life with the same ease a street sweeper clears away autumn leaves. 4.5 years, during which I transformed from a simple man into a complex life support mechanism for her and her daughter Lizanka. I remembered everything. There I was, young and naive, meeting her, a single mother with frightened eyes in the smoking area of our office center. There I was, seeing Lizanka for the first time, a tiny creature with a bow bigger than her head, and my heart, that old fool, cracked. I dove into their life as if into a whirlpool. The court battles with her ex-husband, a slippery and unpleasant type, became my court battles. His drunken threats became my threats. I found lawyers, paid bills, and rocked a crying Lisa to sleep at night when Marina's nerves gave way. I became a wall behind which they could hide from all winds. And then the climax. She gained full custody, and her ex-husband vanished like the morning mist. That day we drank champagne, and Lizanka, climbing onto my lap, called me Daddy for the first time. I almost burst into tears like a sentimental schoolgirl. I thought this was happiness. But then the strangeness began. First, a new car. Bought in secret, against my reasonable arguments about the burden of credit. My advice was met with an icy, "You don't support me." Then, a dog. A huge, slobbering basset hound puppy that she brought into my apartment, with the words, "I want it, and you're against everything that makes me happy." I gave in here, too. I paid for everything. The mortgage, the food, her expensive dresses, her lawyers, and now the food for this melancholic creature named Baron. I was no longer a man, but a function, a convenient, reliable ATM with a dinner-making feature. And then, Babe, from a colleague with whom she had been just playing online games for the past couple of months. Everything fell into place. Her sudden late nights at work, the privacy screen on her phone, the coldness in bed. The world I had so carefully built for them turned out to be a house of cards. When I showed her the message, she didn't apologize. She accused me of suffocating her with my care, invading her personal space, and ruining all her fun. That same evening, she broke up with me via text message. A month later, after scrubbing me from all her social networks, she moved out. In the apartment that I paid for, only 2 remained, me and Baron, a living, slobbering reminder of my fiasco. He lay on the rug, looking at me with his sad, philosopher-like eyes and sighing heavily. It seemed he understood everything. And in that moment, looking into those eyes, I suddenly realized revenge is a dish not just served cold. It is served at an exhibition with a pedigree to a round of applause. The plan was born. Devilish, elegant, and laugh-out-loud funny. Chapter 2. Baron's Unexpected Talent. The first month was a hell soaked in cheap whiskey and self-pity. I wandered through the empty apartment, bumping into the ghosts of the past, Liza's forgotten hair clip, the faint scent of her perfume on a pillow. Baron followed me like a shadow,
occasionally tripping over his own ears. His presence was both irritating and comforting. He was the last thread connecting me to that life and the main piece of evidence of her betrayal. I walked him mechanically, cursing the day this sad-eyed monster crossed the threshold of my home. One day, during one such dreary walk in the park, a little old man approached us, looking like a character from a Chekhov story, wizened in an old-fashioned wool coat and a pince-nez. "Pardon me, sir," he rasped, pointing his cane at Baron. "You have a rare specimen. This is a purebred basset hound of the de Champernay line. Just look at the set of those ears, that top line. Do you show him?" I looked at Baron, who was currently trying to eat a cigarette butt, and chuckled. "Show him? Every day. I make a spectacle of myself." The old man pursed his lips, offended. "Young man, you don't realize your good fortune. This is not a dog, but a golden ticket. My name is Ippolit Matveyevich. I am a sinologist of the old school. Allow me to see his stack."
Ippolit Matveyevich began to fuss around Baron with the enthusiasm of a collector who had found a rare stamp. He looked inside his mouth, felt his paws, made him walk back and forth, clucking his tongue and muttering something about the perfect angulation of the hock. Baron endured all this with philosophical calm, only occasionally glancing at me with his sad eye, as if to say, "Master, are you out of your mind?" In the end, Ippolit Matveyevich delivered his verdict. "The dog has phenomenal conformation, a bit of training, the right diet, and he will be winning prizes at any show. If you wish, I could help you. For a modest fee, of course." Something clicked in my head. A show, prizes, publicity. I suddenly remembered how Marina, scrolling through her social media feed, had breathlessly shown me photos of that very same Stas. He was standing surrounded by trophies, an immaculately groomed Doberman at his side. "Can you imagine? Stasik is a champion. He has the best Doberman in the region," she had chirped then. The idea that had been born on my first night of solitude took on flesh and blood. This was it. The instrument of my revenge was peacefully chewing on a cigarette butt at my feet. "Ippolit Matveyevich," I said, with all the seriousness I could muster, "I want this dog to become a king." Thus began our secret life. By day, I was an ordinary office clerk. But in the evenings, Ippolit Matveyevich and I transformed the lazy and clumsy Baron into an aristocrat. It was like a comedy of the absurd. I, a man who a year ago couldn't tell a bolognese from a bulldog, was now studying breed standards, learning how to properly stack a dog for a show, and running in a special trot. Ippolit Matveyevich was relentless. He made me repeat the heel command 100 times until my cheeks started to twitch. He designed a diet for Baron of turkey and broccoli, which the dog, accustomed to dry kibble, initially turned his nose up at. The humor of the situation was that I, who hated this dog, was pouring more soul and effort into him than into any of my previous hobbies. And Baron, this melancholic creature, seemed to be taking a liking to me. He stopped chewing my shoes and started meeting me at the door, wagging his short tail. We were becoming a team of Avengers. A couple of months later, I stumbled upon an online announcement for the main regional dog show, and in the list of honored participants, under the Doberman breed, was the name Stanislav Volsky. My heart began to pound in anticipation of the grand finale. The curtain is raised, gentlemen. The performance begins.
Chapter 3. The Art of Small Victories. The preparation for the show turned into a military operation. Our apartment became the headquarters, where diagrams of show rings and portraits of judges hung on the walls, and Ippolit Matveyevich, in the role of a field marshal, gave orders. Baron was our secret weapon, which had to be brought to perfection. We honed every movement. The show trot in the park under the astonished gazes of pensioners and mothers with strollers, the demonstration of his bite in front of the hallway mirror, the stand command, which Baron executed with the look of a martyr, freezing in a monumental pose in the middle of the living room. I immersed myself in this world completely. I studied pedigrees, read dog breeders' forums, and learned to distinguish between dozens of types of shampoos and coat conditioners. My revenge was taking shape, and funnily enough, I was starting to enjoy it. Self-pity evaporated, replaced by competitive zeal. Every time Baron did something right, I felt not schadenfreude, but pure, sincere pride. This dog, forced upon me as a symbol of my defeat, was becoming the symbol of my rebirth. A week before the show, I held a dress rehearsal. I invited Ippolit Matveyevich and a couple of his dog-loving acquaintances to act as strict judges. Baron and I walked into the center of the room. I was in a new suit. The dog was perfectly washed and groomed. And in that moment, he astonished me. The clumsiness and laziness were gone. Before me stood a true aristocrat, full of quiet dignity. He trotted around the ring, chalked out on the parquet floor, with a perfect gait, froze impeccably in a stack, and allowed the judges to examine him from head to tail. Ippolit Matveyevich took off his pince-nez and rubbed his eyes. "My God," he whispered, This is magnificent." On the eve of D-Day, I barely slept. I replayed all possible scenarios in my head. What if I trip? What if Baron gets scared of the crowd and refuses to enter the ring? But most of all, I was afraid to see her. To see Marina next to him, happy and smiling. Part of me still hoped she would come to her senses, realize who she had lost. But another, more sober part, understood that the train had left the station. And my task was not to get it back, but to arrange for it the loudest and most humiliating derailment. And so the day came. The huge pavilion buzzed like a disturbed beehive. The barking of hundreds of dogs mixed with the voices of their owners. The smells of dog food, perfume, and adrenaline created a unique cocktail. I found our ring, and almost immediately I saw them. Marina was in a bright dress, holding the arm of Stas, who looked like a smug Roman emperor. His Doberman, muscular and glossy, stood beside him like a living statue. They didn't notice me. I was a blank space to them, part of the background. Marina was laughing at some joke he made, and that laugh cut my heart. But righteous anger was stronger than pain. I took a deep breath, straightened my tie, and patted Baron on his velvety ears. "Well, my friend, time to show them who the real champion is." Our turn was after the Dobermans. Stas and his dog performed flawlessly. Sharp movements, a perfect stack, complete harmony. The audience applauded. The judges nodded in approval. Stas bowed with the air of a victor and cast a triumphant glance at Marina. She was literally beaming with pride. And then our breed was announced. I led Baron into the ring. A few snickers rippled through the hall. Against the backdrop of athletic Dobermans and graceful setters, our long-eared, short-legged Baron looked like a cartoon character. Marina saw me. Her smile vanished, replaced with bewilderment and then a contemptuous smirk. She whispered something to Stas, and he smirked too. They looked at me like a clown who had mistakenly wandered into a royal ball. They did not yet know that this clown had come to overthrow the king. Chapter 4. The King and the Jester. The music stopped. The judge in the center of the ring gave the signal. I took a deep breath and led Baron around the circle. Everything we had practiced for all those long evenings worked. Baron moved not quickly, but with incredible dignity. His long ears flapped comically in time with his steps, but there was breeding in his posture. There was stature. The snickers in the hall died down, replaced by surprised whispers. I saw Marina's face. Her eyebrows shot up. Stas's smirk froze. Next was the stack. Baron froze like a statue, stretching his neck and fixing his mournful gaze on some distant point. He looked simultaneously comical and majestic, like a philosopher contemplating the futility of existence in the middle of a fairground. The judge approached, examined him thoroughly, and checked his bite. Baron stood motionless, only the tip of his tail twitching almost imperceptibly. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Stas lean over to Marina and say something quickly, now without a hint of mockery. When the examination was over and we stepped aside, a silence fell over the hall. The judges exchanged glances, jotting notes in their pads. Then the head judge took the microphone.
Ladies and gentlemen, the choice was not easy. But today we saw not just a dog that meets the standard. We saw character, charisma, and a perfect connection with the handler. The best of breed and winner of the group is the Basset Hound Baron. For a moment, I went deaf. And then the hall erupted in applause. The people who'd been laughing at us 5 minutes earlier were now giving a standing ovation. A beaming Ippolit Matveyevich ran up to me, hugging me and shouting something about the triumph of the old school. I was handed a huge trophy and a blue winner's rosette. Baron, it seemed, didn't quite understand what was happening and simply tried to lick the shiny cup. And then I saw them. They were standing off to the side. Marina was pale. Her face was a mixture of shock, anger, and something else I couldn't quite decipher. But the most incredible thing was happening to Stas. His face expressed no anger or disappointment. It was filled with genuine, almost childlike delight. He wasn't looking at me or Marina. He was looking at Baron. Forgetting everything, he pushed through the crowd and approached me. Marina remained standing behind, like a forgotten object. "Listen, this is incredible," he blurted out, ignoring my icy silence. "I've never seen a Basset Hound in such condition. What a top line! And his movement! Tell me, is he from local bloodlines, or did you import him? I'm a breeder myself, and I have to say, you are a genius." He spoke quickly, fervently, his eyes shining. He was less like a rival and more like a fanatical scientist who had just met a colleague. And then came the final, most shocking twist of this tragicomedy. He turned to Marina, who had walked up, and said reproachfully, "Marisha, you told me your ex was some boring clerk. Why didn't you tell me he's a professional handler of the highest class? We could have collaborated. Can you imagine what kind of puppies we could get from his Baron and my Doberman? Well, genetically it's impossible, of course, but I mean the potential. You hid such a man from me."
In that moment, I understood the essence of my revenge. I hadn't just humiliated her. I had unwittingly opened her eyes to who her new babe really was. He was obsessed not with her, but with dogs. She was just a temporary accessory to an apartment where he could potentially keep another dog. Her world, built on lies and betrayal, collapsed right there, in the middle of the exhibition hall, to the sound of hundreds of barking dogs. She looked from me to Stas, and her face held an expression of utter ruin. She had lost. Not to me. She had lost to the dog she herself had brought into my home. I said nothing. I just smiled the most polite and coldest of my smiles, turned around, and, with the medals on Baron's neck jangling, walked toward the exit. I was leaving not just as a dog show winner. I was leaving as a free man who had turned a symbol of his humiliation into an instrument of triumph. And behind me remained two people, a shocked woman and an enthusiastic dog breeder who had just found himself a new idol. And that, gentlemen, was funnier than any comedy and more instructive than any drama.